Here is a number that governs your life. You've heard it on every news broadcast you've ever watched. You've seen it in every headline about whether things are getting better or worse. It is the number that presidents campaign on and are judged by. The number that central banks raise and lower interest rates to influence. The number that determines whether a country is considered successful or failing, growing or declining, first world or third. It is the single most cited economic statistic on Earth. It is gross domestic product, GDP. And it is 92 years old. For 158 years before that number existed, the United States of America built itself from 13 colonies into the largest economy in the world without it, without any version of it, without any single number that claimed to represent the total economic activity of the nation, without any metric that said, this is how the economy is doing in one figure, right now. And the country worked, it grew, it industrialized, it expanded from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It built railroads and factories and cities. It fought wars and recovered from panics and survived depressions, all without the number that we are now told is essential to understanding whether things are going well. The deeper I went into how America measured its economic life before GDP, the more I found something that the number itself was designed to make invisible. A way of understanding economic health that was local, physical, tangible, observable with the human eye. A way of knowing whether things were working that didn't require a statistician in Washington to calculate a figure and tell the nation what to feel about it. And then a man created a number, and the number replaced the knowing. Start with what existed before, because what existed before is the thing that was erased. Before 1934, there was no concept of the economy in the way you understand it. This sounds impossible. It sounds like saying there were no roads before someone named them roads. But the historian Timothy Mitchell and others have documented that the idea of a national economy as a single, bounded, measurable entity is a 20th century invention. Before that, there were markets, there were trades, there were harvests and prices and wages and debts. There were good years and bad years. But the notion that all of this activity could be summed up, totaled, compressed into a single number that rose or fell like a thermometer reading, that notion didn't exist. And people knew how things were going anyway. A farmer knew how the economy was doing because he knew what his wheat was selling for at the local exchange. A merchant knew because he could count the traffic through his store. A banker knew because he could see the volume of deposits and withdrawals. A railroad man knew because he could count the loaded cars moving through his yards. And railroad car loadings were, for over half a century, one of the most closely watched indicators of economic activity in the country. A factory foreman knew because he could see how many shifts were running. A worker knew because he was either working or he wasn't. The knowledge was distributed, it was local, it was physical, and it didn't require a national accounting office to compile it. Every participant in the economic system had their own indicator, their own way of reading the conditions based on what they could see with their own eyes in their own community. The economy wasn't a number. It was an experience. And the experience varied by place, by trade, by season, by circumstance. This raises a simple but critical question. If the economy was readable without a national number for 158 years, why did someone decide a number was necessary? The answer begins in catastrophe, and the catastrophe tells you what the number was really for. In 1929, the stock market crashed. The Great Depression began, and the federal government discovered, to its embarrassment, that it had no way of measuring how bad things actually were. There were scattered data points, agricultural prices, manufacturing output, unemployment estimates that varied wildly depending on who was counting. But there was no comprehensive picture. No way to say the economy has contracted by X%. No way to measure whether policies were helping or hurting, no way to answer the most basic question a government can ask in a crisis: how much damage has been done? In 1932, the United States Senate commissioned a study. They needed someone to measure the damage. They needed a number. They turned to a Russian-born economist named Simon Kuznets, working at the National Bureau of Economic Research. Kuznets spent 2 years compiling data. He collected figures on industrial production, agricultural output, wages, profits, rents, interest payments, and government expenditure. He assembled them into a framework that had never existed before, a comprehensive accounting of the total income generated by the American economy. In 1934, he delivered his report to Congress. It was titled National Income, 1929 to 1932, and it gave the nation, for the first time in its history, a single number that claimed to represent the size of its economic activity. The number was national income, its descendant, gross domestic product, the total market value of all finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a given period, would evolve from Kuznets's framework over the following decade. But the principle was established in 1934. The economy could be a number, and the number could go up or down, and the direction it moved would tell you whether things were getting better or worse. Except Kuznets didn't believe that. As if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Because here's the detail that changes the entire story. In the same report that gave America its first national economic measurement, Kuznets included a warning. A warning so specific, so direct, so clearly stated, that ignoring it requires a deliberate act of institutional amnesia. He wrote, "The welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measure of national income." The man who created the number told Congress not to use it the way Congress was about to use it. He said the number measured production, not welfare. That it captured economic output, not economic well-being. That a nation could increase its national income while its citizens became more miserable, more indebted, more unequal, more unhealthy. That the number was a tool, not a verdict. A measurement of one dimension of national life, not a comprehensive assessment of whether things were working. Congress thanked him. Roosevelt started using the number in speeches, and the warning was filed in the same drawer where every other inconvenient truth about foundational metrics goes to die. The silence was deafening. Now let's talk about what happened to the number during the war. Because the war is when the number stopped being an accounting tool and became a weapon. In 1941, the United States entered World War II. The War Production Board needed to measure the nation's industrial capacity to determine how many tanks, planes, ships, and bullets the economy could produce. Kuznets, serving as Associate Director of the Bureau of Planning and Statistics at the board, adapted his national income framework for wartime planning. The number became the government's primary tool for managing the war economy. How much could America produce? How fast could production grow? How much of the economy could be redirected from consumer goods to military hardware? The number answered those questions brilliantly. GDP was, as the Oxford economist Diane Coyle has described it, a wartime metric. It measured the nation's capacity to produce things. And during a war, the capacity to produce things is the capacity to survive. The number was perfect for its purpose. The problem is what happened after the war ended. In 1944, delegates from 44 countries gathered at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design the post-war international financial system. Among their decisions was the adoption of GDP as the standard metric for comparing national economies worldwide. The number that Kuznets had designed to measure American production capacity during a depression, the number he had explicitly warned should not be used to infer national welfare, became the global benchmark for economic success. Every country on Earth would now be measured by how much it produced, and the countries that produced the most would be considered the most successful. The number went from a tool to a scorecard. And once it became a scorecard, it started shaping behavior. Because when you measure a country by how much it produces, the country starts doing everything it can to produce more. Not to make its citizens happier, not to make their lives better, not to make the air cleaner or the water safer or the communities stronger. To produce more. Because the number goes up when production goes up. And the number going up is the definition of success. The evidence suggests something much larger than an accounting convention, because here's what GDP counts. Everything that involves a monetary transaction. Every good produced. Every service rendered. Every dollar spent by consumers, by businesses, by the government. All of it goes into the number. An oil tanker runs aground and spills millions of gallons into the ocean. The cleanup costs are counted in GDP. GDP goes up. A hurricane destroys a city. The rebuilding costs are counted. GDP goes up. 1 million people develop cancer and spend hundreds of thousands on treatment. The medical spending is counted. GDP goes up. War is counted. Every bomb manufactured, every missile launched, every dollar spent on military deployment, all of it is production. All of it is GDP. The destruction the bomb causes is not subtracted. Only the spending on the bomb is added. Divorce is counted. 2 lawyers are hired. 2 households are established where one existed before. 2 sets of furniture are purchased. 2 rents are paid. GDP goes up. Crime is counted. Police salaries, prison construction, court proceedings, security systems. All of it is economic activity. All of it is GDP. A country with rising crime has rising GDP from the response to that crime. Now here's what GDP doesn't count. A mother raises her children. She feeds them, educates them, nurses them when they're sick, teaches them to read, holds them when they're afraid. She does this every day for 18 years. GDP counts none of it. Her labor is invisible to the number. The moment she places the same child in a daycare center and pays someone else to do what she was doing, the payment shows up in GDP. The work hasn't changed. The love hasn't changed. But the money has entered the system, and the number notices. A man grows food in his garden and feeds his family. GDP doesn't count it. The moment he stops gardening and buys the same food from a supermarket, the purchase is counted. The food is the same. The nutrition is the same. But the transaction has entered the system. GDP goes up. A community builds a park through volunteer labor. GDP doesn't count it. If the city hires a contractor to build the same park, the contract is counted. A forest stands. It cleans the air. It filters the water. It prevents erosion. It sequesters carbon. It provides habitat. GDP counts none of it. The moment the forest is cut down and the timber is sold, the sale is counted. GDP goes up. The loss of every service the forest provided is not subtracted. The chainsaw adds to the number. The tree never did. I want to pause here and ask something that isn't usually asked. What kind of civilization do you build when your definition of progress is a number that counts the chainsaw, but not the tree? Because GDP doesn't just measure, it directs. When the number is the scorecard, every policy is designed to make the number go up. Cut the forest. The lumber adds to GDP. Drill for oil. The extraction adds to GDP. Build more prisons. The construction adds to GDP. Lengthen the commute. The gasoline purchases add to GDP. Make people sick and then treat them. Both the sickness-causing product and the medical treatment add to GDP. The metric incentivizes production, regardless of whether the production makes life better. It incentivizes consumption, regardless of whether the consumption is necessary. It incentivizes spending, regardless of whether the spending represents progress or pathology. A country that destroys its forests, poisons its water, imprisons its citizens, and treats an epidemic of lifestyle diseases has a higher GDP than a country that preserves its forests, drinks clean water, maintains low crime, and keeps its population healthy. Because destruction and repair are both counted. Prevention is not. The deeper I went into the history of GDP, the more I found that Kuznets' warning was not just prescient. It was prophetic. He predicted exactly what would happen when the number became the goal. In 1962, nearly 3 decades after his original report, he wrote again about the limitations of national income accounting. He argued that distinctions must be kept in mind between quantity and quality of growth, between its costs and returns, and between the short and the long run. He said that goals for more growth should specify more growth of what and for what. More growth of what and for what? The questions the metric was designed to avoid. Now here's what existed before the number that the number replaced. Not a better number. Something that wasn't a number at all. Before GDP, economic health was assessed through a composite of indicators, each one measuring something specific, something physical, something observable. Railroad car loadings measured how much was being transported. Bank clearings measured how much money was changing hands. Commodity prices measured the cost of essential goods. Employment figures measured how many people were working. Crop yields measured agricultural productivity. Building permits measured construction activity. Each indicator told you something specific. No indicator claimed to tell you everything. And beyond the indicators, there was something even older: direct observation. A merchant knew his town's economy by walking through it, by counting the shops that were open and the shops that had closed, by watching the foot traffic on the main street, by listening to what people were buying and what they were putting back. The economy wasn't an abstraction to be calculated in a distant office. It was a texture, a mood, a set of visible conditions that the people living inside it could read without a statistician's help. The farmer who watched his wheat prices, the banker who tracked his deposits, the factory foreman who counted his shifts, the housewife who knew the price of bread and eggs and sugar and could tell you, to the penny, whether things were getting more expensive. These were economic sensors, distributed, local, physical, reliable. And they measured something that GDP cannot. They measured whether life was getting better for the people living it, not whether the aggregate production of the nation was increasing. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across every domain I've studied. Systems that were local, distributed, and experienced by the person living inside them, replaced by systems that were centralized, abstract, and interpreted by institutions. Local solar time replaced by railroad time. The naming ceremony replaced by the birth certificate. The family-held savings replaced by the market-dependent retirement account. The tariff replaced by the income tax. And the distributed, physical, observable experience of economic life replaced by a single number calculated in Washington that claims to tell 330 million people whether their economy is working. Now let's talk about what has been proposed as an alternative, because the alternatives tell you what the number is hiding. In 1968, Robert F. Kennedy gave a speech at the University of Kansas that said what Kuznets had been saying for 34 years. He described what GNP measures and then listed what it does not measure. It does not measure the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not measure the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. Kennedy was assassinated 2 months later. The speech is quoted. The metric is unchanged. In 1972, the tiny Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan announced that it would measure its national success not by GDP, but by gross national happiness. The concept was mocked by economists. It was treated as quaint, as naive, as the kind of thing a small Buddhist kingdom might do because it couldn't compete on GDP. But Bhutan's framework measured what GDP does not: psychological well-being, health, education, cultural resilience, time use, ecological diversity, community vitality, good governance, living standards measured not by production, but by sufficiency. In 1995, the Genuine Progress Indicator was developed as a direct response to GDP's limitations. The GPI starts with personal consumption expenditure, the same base as GDP, and then adds the value of household work, volunteer work, and the services provided by consumer durables and public infrastructure. Then it subtracts the costs of crime, pollution, family breakdown, resource depletion, and income inequality. The result is a number that attempts to measure whether economic activity is actually making life better. The GPI has been calculated for the United States from 1950 to the present. And here's the finding that should have made headlines. GDP has risen almost continuously since 1950. The GPI rose alongside it until approximately 1978. Then it stalled. And then it declined. For the last 4.5 decades, by a measure that accounts for the costs GDP ignores, the American economy has been getting worse. Not producing less, getting worse. The production has increased. The well-being has not. The silence was deafening. Because consider what that divergence means. It means that since roughly 1978, the United States has been producing more, while the quality of life, adjusted for inequality, environmental degradation, and social costs, has been declining. The number that the nation uses to judge its economic success has been going up. And the conditions that determine whether people are actually better off have been going down. The metric and the reality have been moving in opposite directions for nearly 50 years. And the metric is the one that governs policy. The metric is the one that presidents campaign on. The metric is the one that the Federal Reserve targets. The reality, the GPI, the lived experience, the quality of air and water and community and time and health, that reality has no institutional champion. It has no cabinet-level department. It has no quarterly report that makes the evening news. I don't have a complete theory. I have a question that multiplies the deeper I look. Why did a metric designed to measure wartime production capacity become the permanent global standard for national economic success? Why did the man who created the metric explicitly warn Congress not to use it as a measure of welfare? And why was the warning ignored for 92 years? Why does the number count war production, pollution cleanup, and prison construction as economic gains while ignoring childcare, community health, and environmental preservation? Why has no major nation adopted the Genuine Progress Indicator, or any alternative that measures whether economic activity is actually improving human life? Why does the divergence between GDP and GPI since 1978, one of the most significant economic findings of the last half-century, receive almost no attention in mainstream economic reporting? And the question underneath all the others, the one that sits in the space between the number and the life it claims to describe, the space where a mother's work is invisible, where a forest counts only when it's cut, where a cancer treatment adds to the scorecard but a healthy body does not, where the economy can grow and grow and grow while the people living inside it feel less secure, less connected, less well, and less certain that things are getting better. What were we measuring before the number? Not production, not consumption, not aggregate output. We were measuring whether the wheat was selling, whether the shop was busy, whether the neighbor had work, whether the bread was affordable, whether the town was thriving or thinning. We were measuring life, directly, locally, with our own eyes. And then a man in Washington gave us a number, and the number replaced the seeing, and for 92 years, The number has told us the economy is growing, while the genuine progress indicator tells us the progress stopped in 1978. I'll leave you with this. The next time you hear that GDP went up, ask yourself what went up with it. Did your health go up? Did your free time go up? Did the air get cleaner? Did the commute get shorter? Did the community get stronger? Did the water get safer? Did your children's education get better? Did your sense of security increase? Or did production go up? Did consumption go up? Did spending go up because costs went up? Did medical expenditure go up because more people got sick? Did military spending go up because another conflict started? Did the cleanup costs of another disaster add another line to the national accounts? The number can't tell you the difference. It was never designed to. Its creator told Congress that in 1934. The welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measure of national income. He said it clearly. He said it on the record. He said it in the same report that gave them the number they wanted. They took the number. They ignored the warning. And for 92 years, the world has measured its success with a metric that counts the chainsaw and forgets the tree.